So this is what you want to end up with when we get done at the end. 4 blocks.
4 blocks. 4 blocks.
Uh-oh, somebody's got reverb. And when I don't want you to put the 4 blocks together. Okay, I got to see who's reverbing.
I have a fan going in the background. Would that be it?
No, it's somebody's microphone. Oh, it stopped. Okay, we'll try without worrying about it.
That might have been me. I'm trying to get you on something bigger than my phone.
Okay.
That I had it on mute, so I didn't think you should.
Yeah,
hear
I think
it.
that took care of it when you muted it. That works better.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Do not sew the 4 blocks together, because when I get them, I'm going to mix and match them or try and come up with a pattern that works with what I get. So let's start out with the beginning. You have 6 strips in your pack, or if you're cutting, you want 3 neutral strips and 3 different focus strips, the width of the fabric, by 3 inches. Then you're going to sew and I have the green in the middle, but any one of these would work in the middle. Going to sew a neutral, a solid, a neutral, a solid, a neutral, a solid. Then once you get those strips sewn together, and here's some tips on that. When you're sewing them together, make sure you sew the first 2 in one direction and then start at the opposite end and sew the second piece together in the opposite direction. That way you won't get twist in your sewing. And same thing on here. Here's another trick. When you're matching, when you get back to this end, make sure that it's just a little shorter than this one when you're flipping it over to this side. It's just a little shorter, and make sure you have the same end, because like this one, I didn't realize it was directional. But if you do that, then you know you're going to get your directionals in the correct way. And another little tip, when you're ironing, take and finger press it just a little bit. And as you're ironing, make sure that you stretch out the edge a little so that you don't get a crease in the other side. If you have a crease in this other side, it's going to make your block smaller. So you want to make sure that you're creasing where the seam is. And once you get,
Would you say
this
that one
says-
more time, please, Lynn? You're creasing.
Okay. Let me show you. When I crease and I iron, I start on the back side and I'm ironing toward the dark. So as I iron, I hold this side and I put my iron down on here. I pull just a little bit and I iron. And the reason I do that is because you do not want to get a crease in here. You want this seam to be flat. You ever gotten down to where you're working on something and you go back and you see this is ironed over a little bit like this? What you need to do is make sure that your getting that seam ironed crisply so that there isn't any extra fabric there. So with this one, it's easy because you can hold and you can take and put your iron and hold it here and just turn your iron toward the center. I then flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. And I come to this side and I make sure, and I just do one more iron in the top. It sounds like it's a little over ironing, but we're all trying to get our patterns to be the correct size. So you don't want to have any extra hangovers here. Ultimately, if you have that hangover and then you sew it to your next block, you're losing some of your fabric. When you're working on,
Lynn,
yes,
do you, so you sew two strips together, do you press before you sew the third one?
I did not on this pattern.
Okay.
I waited until I got to the end, and I probably should have with this one, because what you end up with is something that is like this, and then you got to work at getting it pushed over to the edges. So what I did with this one was I actually finger pressed it first, all the way down. Now you could do like I'm doing right here with this hand and your iron. If you wanted to try and do it that way, I'm always afraid I'm going to burn myself. So, but if you finger press first, and then you come back and you use your iron lightly on this side, and then finish it out on this side, you get a nice crisp seam where you've ironed it. But make sure, like again, make sure that when you sew this direction, you're sewing this direction on this side. Okay, so then you end up with two sets like this. And what you're going to do is we're making a tube. So you're going to put your pieces together. And I did this on the ironing board because I can see the whole thing on the ironing board. Because this side, you can see, is matched up pretty good. And this side isn't matched up very well. So, and it kind of does make a difference if you flip it like this. When you're looking at the pattern up here, you can see they kind of are in a certain way. So if you're doing this for yourself and you want them all to be the same, make sure that you put this on the same side each time. So since we have it all ironed to the dark side, this is going to fit right into that ridge. So again, at the end, find the end that matches up the best. And then fit your seams together and go down the whole thing and fit your seams together all the way down. Now, this will give you a good idea if you sewed your seam straight. Because on the last one, I set this up this morning, I had a place where I got a little fat in one of my seams. And when I got to that fatness, the edges didn't match up. Now, does anybody have a good idea of what you should do when your edges don't match up? See, like the edges aren't matching up there. What I did was I just matched them up as I was sewing, but probably what you should do is take out your handy dandy ruler and check which one's best. So this was a 3-inch. It should have 2 3/4. So I've actually sewn this a 1/16 wrong on this side. And on this side, did I cut these right? Yeah, there's 3-inch. This side is the correct side. So really I should take and allow that hangover because this is the correct side. Does it matter?
And
a
then run
1/16
your
of an
quarter-inch, then run your quarter-inch foot along
From
the
this
edges.
side.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So when I sew this, I need to sew it on this side. So I think I'm going to give myself a little reminder and put the pin on this side so I know I'm sewing from that side. So then once you get it all matched up and you sew your 1/4 inch on this side and you sew your 1/4 inch on this side and you end up with a tube. And it's actually a tube. So here's the big lesson I want to show y'all, because it took me a long time to learn this. I think because I avoided it. But there are several ways to cut a 45-inch angle. Because once you get your tube, you need to cut a 45-inch angle. And you're going to be cutting, see if I can get you bigger.
Cutting what?
Hang on a second. Trying to get focus bigger on my phone. Okay, you're going to be cutting to have one seam cross over and one seam going to stay all the way to the edges. And I'll explain that just a little bit better with when I have the ruler up here. First, let's start with mat. Most mats have a 45-degree angle. This is the hardest way to cut a 45 because you're always having to move your piece that you're working on. So you would line it up on that 45 along with this edge being right on even with one of your guidelines. But if all you have is your 45-degree on your mat, well, you're going to have to use that. But if you have rulers that have 45-degree, it's much easier. So this first one, if I wanted to do a 45-degree, I match this end of this seam up with the 45-degree mark, and I match this edge up right here with one of my guidelines. So now when I match my ruler up to this 45-degree line, I now have a 45-degree angle I can cut.
What about the selvages?
The salvages are off to the edge. And if you only have a 1/4 inch of the salvage in your project, that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's at an angle, you're more likely not to get too much of the salvage anyway. So I'm gonna double check it too, just to make sure.
Hey,
I got
Lynn,
this right.
are you lining it up with the 45-degree angle on the mat on both sides?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm looking at it here
Mm-hmm.
and
Up there. Okay, that's what I want to know.
up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm putting it right next to the 45 so I can see the 45-inch line. That way I know I've got it. And that way I can cut. And now I have a 45-degree angle cut. Now to do the next one with your mat, you then have to take this and you have to flip it around and you have to match up here with the line and here with your lines again in the other way and cut it. So that's the hardest way to do. The next way to do is the next hardest way. Okay, so when you're looking at your ruler, there's an X down at the bottom here. That's your 45, it even says on mine, 45 degree. That's your 45-degree angle. And the reason they have a double X is exactly what we're doing. You don't have to flip your ruler around and flip it around and flip it around to get what you want. You just go back and forth between the two lines. So in order to do the next 45, you take that line, that straight line right there, that says 45 degree, you put it on your seam of your project. And up at the top here, what we want to have happen is this, we want this to be open. So I'm going to cut it just past the sew line. Okay, so I'm going to match it up with my seam down here. And I'm going to get that just past. I'm going to get closer so you can see. Here's my sew line. I should have done this in a darker thread. So I'm getting it just past that little sew line. And over here, I'm matching it exactly on my thread. You can also match it to your mat if you have it lined up straight, but it's better to match it to your thread.
Where is the pipe pushed far in the lights behind? No.
Green.
So now I've got those two places matched. When I cut.
Hey, Lynn, before you move that, I want to ask a question.
Yep.
Okay. At the top, I couldn't see your threads, but I noticed that it left a 1/4 of an inch between where you cut. Is that
Yes.
a good thing, a good way to measure it also? Am I making any sense? I'm not, am I?
Yeah, you're making sense, but I wouldn't use that.
Okay.
I would, because it's, you want to make sure that you get to where the thread's going to let loose so you have an open like this.
Okay. Okay.
Because this side needs to come open.
Okay.
And now you have two 45-degree angles. So you should have a nice square when you open up your piece and you iron this back. And again, iron to the dark side. So now what you end up with is a square block. And it should measure 10 inches. But if it doesn't, it's because I gave it a 3-inch, these 3-inch pieces. I couldn't find anywhere. Carmen could probably find it where you could, it would tell you how wide to cut your strip to get a specific size square block. But I'm going to be honest, I didn't take the time to figure it out, and I just did 3" and it came out to be 10 inches. And I think if we all do it basically the same, they should all come out similar. So that's a second way. And here I'm going to show you why that was easier with these double lines. Because now when I go to this way, this other line is what I use to line up on the bottom. And
On your thread?
yes. And with this line, it's easy because you just take and line up the edge of your bottom of the ruler with this line, right, with this side of your project. And get it right next to where the thread is. Now, I can cut again. Oh, and if I cut straight, which I didn't, see, I make errors. I've got another square, almost. And my rule from last time is to hold this down and take it away, and I didn't do that. And I would have noticed that, and I would have messed up my mess. Okay, so that's with a straight ruler that has a crisscross 45-degree for you to use to make a 45-degree angle. Here's a third way, and this is kind of the easiest. If you have a ruler, a square larger than what your finished block is, you can use it. And if you notice on the square, there's a straight line. So when you use a square ruler that has a 45-degree line across this middle, that's larger than your finished project, or it can be the same as your finished project too. That would be even more accurate. What you'll do is take that straight line and match it up to the bottom of your project. Oops. Okay, so this is now the bottom of my project because I'm going to be cutting this way. And it does make it easier because every time you cut, you're going to be matching up to this cut edge. So once you get the first cut edge, it makes it quicker and easier.
And
So
are
I
you
line it
lining
up
up? Are you lining up on your thread line?
on my seam line, yes.
Okay.
If your seam line doesn't, it wiggles, straighten it out. You can take and put your ruler to the side here and get it straight up against that edge of that ruler and then come back. And I'm matching this cut edge to this side of my ruler and this line to my seam. And now when I cut it, I have a square. Sorry. So I've run out of room on my mat. So I'm going to bring my project back over here. And since I'm using my square ruler, it makes it easy. But instead of matching to this side, I'm matching to this side. Same rules. Match the line to your seam line. Match this side of your ruler to your cut line. And you've got another one. Now, this does waste a little bit of material doing this project, but I've found that you could actually use this last piece and this first piece to make edges for your project if you wanted to. So, or you can give it to your favorite sister who does scrap work and say, here, it's already sewn together for you. So I got my 4 pieces out of this and they're done.
You do not do that.
Say that again.
No, I was talking to the cat. I thought I was on
Oh.
mute. I'm sorry.
So do we have any questions?
Is that block that you did for the project, or do you have to just use that for something else in the future where you need a smaller block?
Oh, this piece you're talking about?
No, the 10-inch block where you started cutting it a little bit wonky.
Because I didn't get it a total 1/4 of an inch away from the wonkiness, I'll still use it. I'll just leave this hanging and I'll make sure that I match up to this side and know that I've messed up on this side.
Okay, so
So-
that won't come apart in the future with tension? Will the quilting hold that so that that one piece of the strip doesn't start fraying?
No, you can go up to 1/8 of an inch on your seams. There are some patterns that they only have 1/8 of an inch. You might take and make your stitch length a little shorter, and that way it'll hold it better. Or some people do go over it twice instead of once, but I think the stitch length change would work just as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the ones that we're gonna turn in, do you want any of those ends that are not a full block?
Yeah, send them to me.
Okay. Mine are done.
Okay.
Just quick
Yay.
clarification, Lynn, when I'm cutting the strips, since I didn't pick up a packet, when I'm cutting the long strips to sew together, they are, did you say 3 inches?
Yes.
Okay.
3-inch wide by the length of the fabric. And if you look at my sewn strips,
The length of the fabric or the width of the fabric?
oh, excuse me, the width, sorry. width.
And Lynn, what are the size of those individual blocks that you want us to hand in? 10
They-
inches?
Let
10
me
and a half.
iron this one, or here, I'll use this one up here. It is supposed to be, it's just a little bit bigger than 10-inch.
Okay,
I mean, it's almost a,
but you
10
don't
and
want
a
us,
quarter.
you don't want us to trim them down.
no, send them to me the way they are.
Because if you get all of them are 10 1/4 or a little,
Yeah.
somewhere between
See-
10 and 1/4, then they'll fit together nicely.
I just measured another one from the same batch. And yeah, it's about 10 1/4, but it's kind of wonky on the edge. So I think if I get them all and they're all a little bit more than 10, I might trim them down to 10 inches. But don't do that. Let me figure it out.
I actually think it might be easier if you sewed them together, then you can match things up
Right.
and then
Well,
trim them.
This time around, let me get them all just the way you get them done. And then maybe in future projects.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I want them all
we just
separate.
turn
I
them
don't
in
want them
without-
sewn together.
We'll turn them in without trimming them, and then you can deal with it when you put them
Yes.
together.
That's what I would like you. So
End, the one end is got sewn together on both ends. Should I just leave it like that? And you can trim it how you want for edges?
I'm not following you, Carmen.
Well, you know how when you trim the square, the one end opens because it's at the point. But this is my end piece.
Hang on, let me focus on you.
Okay. So my end piece has sewn together at the top and the bottom,
Yes,
so it doesn't open. So just leave it like
that's
that.
okay. Yeah, just leave it like that, because
Okay.
I'm not sure if I get, because all the end pieces are going to be different lengths. So let me see what I get, and I'll trim those off on my
Okay.
own. So
Lynn, this is Glenda. I have a question. I think I got confused about what you want us to send. Do you want us to put the 4 quadrants together and
no,
not trim? Yes, you do want us to do that, but then not trim it, right?
I want it just like you see it up on my board, 4 separate pieces like this.
Oh, you want the 4 separate pieces. Okay.
Yes, and
Oh, okay.
whatever ends you get.
Okay, I got it.
So you got 2 ends.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, just like that. And that'll help me because when I get them all, I can make them all similar.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, I'm going to stop us recording because I think I've got everything in that I wanted to say about the different pieces.